Omakase, the life and words of author M. Kieran. Hi there. If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a brief introduction. My name is Max. I write every day. I write books for a living. On my ongoing quest to make broad statements and opinions with the goal of sharing about myself and also anger a lot of people without realizing it, I would have to say that West Coast is the best coast. My pronouns are they, them, and once upon a time, I thought of starting a podcast purely out of spite. This one is not that podcast, though, because this here is a writing advice and inspiration podcast, and I'm your host. Usually, I talk about the random encounters of life, situations that happen that we have no control over, random encounters. And if you would like a real-life example of just what a random encounter is like, especially from my point of view, I hit record on the microphone, and I did my opening bit on a different take that you didn't get to see, because as soon as I began to talk, out of the corner of my vision, I'm sitting at my desk, and I have a window in front of me, and I could see my neighbor walking outside of their house, brandishing, I kid you not, a chainsaw. And in my brain I thought, it would be horrible if he decided to just start that chainsaw, and before I finished that thought, he started the chainsaw. So let me just say, you did not get to hear that. Random encounters. Sometimes things happen, but what matters is not that we get focused on the bad things, the unfortunate things, the misfortunes, the trippings, the fallings, but rather on getting up, deleting that take, and starting the podcast from scratch. Hey there. The name's Max, also known as M. Kieran. This podcast is broken into 3 segments whenever I'm not talking about random stuff for the sake of getting it off my chest. A chainsaw. A chainsaw, you guys. It appears to me that he did use that chainsaw to cut some sort of wood, maybe the branch of one of his trees. I can't see because that's on the other side of me. My window can't see that. But I had that cartoon moment of, I'm like, is he brandishing a chainsaw? Is he gonna start the chainsaw? I just hit record. My man, Oh well, that's life, and this is a writing advice podcast. It's broken into 3 segments. The first one is my update, my week, what I've been up to, what I've been doing. I share a little bit into my personal insight, my writing journey, and the media, games, books, movies that I've been consuming. The second segment is viewer questions. I take usually 2 questions from my comments, from Tumblr, from Twitter, from YouTube, and from my email. If you have one, send it my way, and I may or may not feature it in a future podcast. Today we'll be talking about being overprotective of our characters, particularly the protagonist, and dealing or making the most out of bad feedback. 2 very technical questions this week, and of course we'll be finishing up with the last third of the show, the prompt. I have for you a weird exercise, a weird story idea, and I want you to just think, brainstorm ideas, consider what you would do if you were the one writing this story. And I'm actually realizing at this very moment that I forgot to do housekeeping. Hey there! The song that you hear at the beginning and at the end of this show is called Dream of Green by the OC Jazz Collective and OCRemix.org. OCRemix.org is home to thousands upon thousands of free-to-download video game remixes. This one is actually from a Chrono Trigger track, which happens to be one of my favorite games of all time, and of course, there are tons and tons of remixes from the entire soundtrack. I recommend OCRemix. It's just a great resource for music to write to, because video game music and video game remixes tend to be unobtrusive, which means you can have them in the background while you write without having it, getting in the way of the actual writing process. The other thing I want to remind you, as always, is that reviews and ratings mean a lot to a podcast, especially a still relatively young podcast like this one. So if you really enjoy the show, please consider just scrolling down on the podcast page and leaving a rating or a review if you feel really generous. But yeah, with all that stuff out of the way, let's dive into the first segment of the show. Let's begin with my week. What have I been up to? What have I been consuming? And how has my writing journey fared since the last time we caught up with one another? As of the recording of this video, I have been writing consecutively every single day for 95 days. Day 100 is like almost here, and that is crazy. And I'm excited because I have some really big writing days coming up. I do a little bit of writing every day. Some days is more than others. I guess if I had to, I will most likely have a big segment next week on it. But thinking about it, I feel that the most effective thing I've gotten from writing every single day, it has been feeling better about the instant before I jump in. Because I feel like that's the thing that's always hard no matter what. It's that sensation right before you start. And doing this for so long has kind of made that go away, made it less scary, made it easier to just be like, well, it's a small session, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to get it done, and that's how most of my small sessions go. It's been nice. I will probably do a big segment on the next week once I hit day 100. So, I've been writing every day. I've been working on a big project and a small project. The small one, which you guys will probably get to see really soon. Really soon, TM. I will give you more details on that once I, get it working. But in the intervening time, in between now and then, the other thing that I did this week, because I know, I don't want to make it feel like this segment is Max rants about inconsistency in fiction, because I think I did it last week, and I think I did it the week before. So I don't want to get ranty. So I'm going to try my best to stay focused and on point. This week, I finished a personal project, the stuff that I do on the side for fun. I've been playing a video game. Don't worry, I'm not going to go in great detail. I'm going to just talk generals. For those of you who want particular details, I'll walk you through it. I just finished a game by the name of Fallout 4, and I guess I enjoyed the game. That's not the most glowing review coming from yours truly. I just felt that the story kind of really I didn't find the story that effective. The game was fun to play, thankfully. There is a very glaring piece of ineffective writing and an inconsistency. And I'm going to touch, it's not going to be spoilers, I'm not going to say any names or anything, but let's just say, alright? In this world, there is advanced technology. And your antagonistical figure and character, the main foil to the protagonist, is the leader of a technologically advanced faction. You get to meet this character personally, and the story moves on forward from you getting to meet them as a person in a position of power, leading, of course, this faction of technologically advanced people. The story establishes relatively early on that this faction has the ability to augment human people, replacing their organs with mechanical ones that make them stronger, make them better, make them even last way beyond the general human life expectancy. One particular example is a character who, when you meet them, are 180 years old. They are more machine than man, quite literally quoting the game. So, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because the story establishes all of these points. Technologically advanced faction, human augmentation, cybernetic augments, cybernetic limbs, organs, cybernetic, of course, being a mix of biological and machine, like replacing a missing arm with a mechanical one. or replacing a faulty organ with one that is both biological and machine. Somewhere along, let's say, if a plot is a clock face, I would say approximately at 11. Approximately at 11 on the clock face, you learn that the antagonist you have known this whole time is dying. It comes out of nowhere. It comes without an establishment. And I don't want to get ranty. I'm being really good. I promise I'm being really good. But like, you can tell when someone realizes that they forgot to establish something, because the very first thing that a story like this does is to justify it. And that within itself is ineffective writing, because you shouldn't have to immediately justify why the plot twist makes sense. The plot twist should make sense because you established it earlier. And the reason why the technologically advanced faction can't just prevent it, can't just fix the person, because, you know, they have the technology. They had a person who was 180 years old and you wouldn't have known by just looking at them. Their big explanation, which is quite literally a throwaway line, is that the antagonist has cancer. And this here is like trying to patch a plot hole with a can of worms, because it's like your technologically advanced faction can't do anything about cancer. You guys have androids that look like people, behave like people, are made like people, but you can't do anything about cancer. You replaced all of that guy's organs with cybernetic ones. You can't do anything about cancer. And even forget that. The basic idea that this is never foreshadowed, no one talks about it. You never see like the antagonist cough, which would be like the silliest thing. But it's just like, like the clock face that represents the progression of a story, It's like, 10 p.m., this antagonist, the strong, is powerful, is the leader of a faction. Everyone is afraid of him. 11 o'clock, I forgot to tell you, I'm dying. And I'm like, no, I'm waggling my finger back and forth. No. I've said this before, and I've said it on my other channel many times. I feel like the deciding factor, like the thing that you can, like, I almost as an anchor, I'm being really crimson. A plot twist that is immediately followed with an explanation of why the plot twist makes sense, I feel, it is most of the time being ineffective. Because a plot twist, oh my god, I think I've talked about this. I think I must have talked about this in a previous podcast. A good plot twist should be an aha moment, not a wait, what moment. It should be a thing for, all the things that you have done up until this point make sense. Everything clicks into place. It's the last piece of the puzzle. And you put it in, then you suddenly realize, oh, that's the image that I've been building piece by piece all along. That's why the antagonist did that thing then. And that's why someone said this over there. I don't know. It just came out of nowhere. And someone may say, Max, that's a nitpick. And I'm like, it's one out of many things I didn't enjoy in that particular story. But it's like the most tangible one that I can just point out and just be like, I'm looking for a word. It's the word when like a surgeon just like cuts a piece of something from a body. I'm forgetting. I can't remember. This is the stuff where like, if I was writing and I didn't know the word, I would just put it in brackets. And I'm like, that word, that's when surgeons remove things from a body. But I could just cut that example and put it here for you. If you want to have the antagonist to be revealed that they're actually dying as an act to make you feel bad for them, I don't know. You should probably definitely bring it up. Not like directly say, hey, by the way, the guy has cancer, in spite of, or scientifically advanced faction being able to probably do something about that. Like, I don't know. I'm getting into editor mode where I'm like, and the antagonist shows absolutely no signs of, late stage cancer, which apparently he had all along. It's bad writing. It's just, it's ineffective writing. That's not how you do the thing good. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Max is Your Editor. Let me just grab this manuscript. I was gonna make the sound of me brandishing a chainsaw That's not what I think about most people's stories, but it's what I do as an editor. I have to point out the logical and factual fallacies and like inconsistencies in your work. Because if I don't do it, the people reading your story will. I ranted, didn't I? That was a rant, wasn't it? It's fine. Fallout 4 is over. I will never have to play that game ever again. For anyone interested in game-specific points and is wondering, Max, which faction did you side for at the end of the game? I sided with the Railroad, not for any particular kind of ideological point of view. I just like playing with them because it made me feel like I was some sort of super spy. You know, they give you missions, you go out and you do shady things. It just felt nice. I was like, oh, you guys are treating me like I'm some sort of, spy. I like that. That's fun. I'll hang out with you guys. Alright. Enough of me pointing out inconsistencies in fiction. I know you all love it, but we have to talk about the sponsors for the... Oh man. One of these days, I'm gonna get the one person who hates it when someone points out, inconsistencies in fiction. They'll be like, oh my god, Max, why can't you just enjoy things? And the answer to that is, I do enjoy things. But I also care a lot about storytelling, and I find that to be my duty to point out when it's really good, and also point out when it's not, so that we can all learn from it. Also, I want to let you know, before we jump into the second segment, the sponsors for this show. This podcast is brought to you thanks to my patrons. Patreon.com/mkaren is the number one place to support me in what I do. I don't have any sponsorships. I don't have any plans to have them going on. You won't listen to me going off about Blue Apron or Wix or Squarespace. I'm not looking into doing stuff like that. I would rather prefer to keep this podcast funded by my patrons. Patreon.com/mkaren. If you pledge $1, and $1 is good on my book, $1 a month, you get to listen to this podcast a week before it goes live on YouTube, and you get to vote on polls, and you get to listen to my monthly workshop a month before it goes live on YouTube and everywhere else. $1 a month. That's pretty cool. If you pledge more, you get more things, like copies of my books, access to my super duper secret writing zine, and of course, shoutouts. In this segment of the episode, I always like to give a big shout out to my big sponsors, the people who are pledging, who are being so generous. I just have to give them a shout out here in the middle of the show. And first goes my super duper huge sponsor, Atalac. Atalac has a DeviantArt page. You can follow them and see more of their art and their writing over at deviantart.com/Atalac. That is deviantart.com/AHTILAK. And a shout out to the rest of my big sponsors. A. Howard, Amelia, Angela, Brenda, Caitlin Bumbalo. And a new patron. A new shout out to your patron. Oh, and it's your last name is in French, so here goes nothing. Gilbert Gaudreau. That doesn't sound right. Gilbert Gaudreau. Gaudreau. Hey there! Thank you for pledging. All shoutouts come with a free I butcher your name until you tell me that I got it wrong. Yeah! Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for your support. It actually means the world. Thank you. Gilbert Gaudreau. No, I don't feel confident. I was gonna be like, I feel confident about that. I think I did my best. I lost all confidence between saying it and then thinking about it. All confidence lost. Irina Phoenix, John Netz, Joe, Luki, Mark Maruska, Nicola, Pat Eitson, Polly Craftwell, Rain Misoa, Soul Muse, and Synexia. And now, let us resume the show with the second segment, viewer questions. Today, I've got two questions for you. One on characters and the other on feedback. Let's dive right in. I got a question from a dear viewer on YouTube asking if it is possible, or even a bad thing, to be overprotective of your main character. And of course, I'm going to broaden this question. Is it possible to be overprotective of your characters? And is it a bad thing? And I feel in my heart, through my years of writing and storytelling, I feel it can be a bad thing. It can be a bad thing, especially when you yourself, as the writer, intervene for the sake of lessening a character's struggle or making them less miserable. I think it is the duty of the writer to see this story through, and I don't think I've said it on the podcast, but I'll say it now. When I took several creative writing courses, and I had the pleasure of meeting an amazing professor. Her name is Marcy, and through her lessons, I caught something, and I have coined it the Marcy rule, the golden Marcy rule, and it is that character is not a byproduct of plot. Plot is a byproduct of character. Plot happens when characters are taking action, making choices, and facing the consequences of both. Our characters do things, and things happen. There are rippling effects, and they face the consequences. I was talking about this last time, I think, that characters should never get anything for free. I don't want to say characters should suffer, but I think characters should not have an easy time snaking their way out of trouble. Why? Why should characters suffer? Why shouldn't we just make it so that they live happy lives forever? I think, from my point of view, it's because drama is key to storytelling. And I feel like I have to go deeper into this subject, because I know that there is and I made a video on this a long time ago, I remember. There is a sentiment of, you either love your characters and you treat them like your babies, and that's not inherently a bad thing, or you are like this evil mastermind and you just love putting your characters through hell. And of course, most of us are somewhere in the middle. But to me, it's not a matter that I love seeing my characters suffer, and it's not a matter that I just love them so much and they're my babies and I want to never have anything bad happen to them. My thing is that when I sit down to write, I'm there for the story. I am the first person who gets to read that book, and I want to see what's going to happen next. And I try. And I know this may sound weird, because you may be thinking, Max, how can you remain neutral? How can you just transcribe the story when you are the one writing it? And I think part of that is to get lost in the writing, and my own particular point of view when it comes to writing fiction. That I don't see myself as the director. I don't see myself as the person sitting on the director's chair, shouting "cut," or that's a wrap up, or other things that directors say. I don't even see myself as the storyboarder or the script writer. I've always seen myself as the camera person. I am the sole witness to the events happening before me, and all I have with me is this camera. Camera people almost never interact with the calamities they record. They are witnesses to what's happening, and when I write, I become the witness to what's happening. It's part of the reason why I really enjoy writing stories where the narrator is a character. It is someone, maybe someone we know. Maybe the protagonist. Maybe it's told in first person. Maybe it's told in third person from someone else who heard the story. But I like writing stories where the narrator is clearly a person, because it gives me the chance to just see what they're experiencing and relay their thoughts without me being lured into moving things one way or the other. And I know that's going to sound weird. It's like, but Max, where does Max begin and where does this story end? Is that how the saying goes? Where's the line between what Max is creating and what the story is naturally? And I think I think I don't know where the line is, but at least when I sit down to write, I try to not manipulate the writing. I just let it see where it goes. My characters are all very good at getting themselves in trouble, and it's usually just my task to just see what happens. There are times when, yes, I get ideas for things that could happen, but my descriptor has always been cool things that should maybe hopefully happen in the story. This is also part of the reason why I spend very little time outlining, because you can spend a lot of time preparing to write a novel, and trust me, I write these all the time. I can assure you, with every book, I spend less time outlining because I know, the instant I sit down to write, the instant a character opens their mouth, and if the narrator is a character, then the instant I start writing, the story will change. The outline will be devastated. So I spend less time on that. I just jump in, I fly by the seat of my pants, and I see where the story takes me. I think it would be a disservice to your characters, to your world, to your story, to stick your spoon in it before it's done. Yeah, let those brownies bake. Don't poke them until they're ready. Don't mess with the story until you've finished writing it, and then you can actually make things make sense, or fix that or that, or adjust the themes and what characters say. That may not be the best metaphor, but it's the one that came to mind, so I'm gonna go with it. I think it is possible to be too overprotective of your characters. I think it is super possible. But I think what matters the most is just to let them be. Especially let them make mistakes. Because that's, making mistakes. It's part of taking action and making choices and saying things and doing things and affecting the flow. There is no better protagonist than the one who is getting stuff done, even if it's stuff that will ultimately be their demise. That right there, that's the good stuff. And now, as for the second question of the day, I got a message on Tumblr from a writerly friend who got some pretty bad feedback. I'm not going to go into detail because it was a lot of personal stuff. And listen, at the core of it all, this writerly friend got some pretty bad feedback. We're talking about people saying the thing that they should never say, which is like, this story is not good. And stuff like, this sucks, that sucks. That is terrible feedback. And I want to tell you why. Because, and I know someone out there, because I was literally talking about this with one of my writerly friends last night, because they wanted to get feedback from me on their piece, and they were worried that, I would hate it. And they thought, it's like, well, what if, Max just comes back the next day, slams down the manuscript and says, this sucks. And I told them that that's a dumb thing to think, because I wouldn't do that. Because I wouldn't say that. I would look for a much more tactful way to say what I meant to say, other than just, reaching into your chest and pulling your heart out. And I feel like this is getting us to the point I want to say today. And that is that if you're giving someone feedback, and unfortunately the poor writerly friend who sent the question, they reached out to, I don't want to say a normie, but a person who doesn't write. So you are already kind of in like a bad spot. Because you have to reach out to people who write, mostly because they understand what you're trying to do. And I'm not saying normal people don't understand, because if you reach to someone who reads a lot, then you will get more meaningful feedback. But let me just, getting back to the point. When you're giving someone feedback, your goal should be to inspire them to keep going. You should never give feedback to someone that can ultimately be taken as give up, quit, stop now before you waste more of your time. That's trash. That's garbage. Don't waste lead or ink writing trash like that. Because at the end of the day, you don't want someone to give up on writing. And if they did something so bad, find a way to state it. Find a way to say it. Find a way to let them know what they did and how they can improve. This is another thing. Not to go in great detail, because you know that I can ramble. Back when I took creative writing courses in college, the thing that we did, because it wasn't like, today we're going to learn about foreshadowing. No. It was more like, little exercises, group writing, and then group feedback. We would break up into little groups and read each other's writing, or rather, give each other's feedback on last week's writing that we gave each other. Don't be that one person who shows up and is like, whoops, I forgot to do all the reading. Don't be that person. Make the time. And of course, since the groups were kind of randomized. That's a word that came out of my brain. Since the groups were randomized every single week, sometimes you got some pretty crappy teams. And I know, because I dealt with people like that, and my friends dealt with people like that, there were the kind of writers, the kind of awful people who said awful things to hurt other people's feelings. The people who would give really bad feedback. And when I say bad, I don't mean as in like, this feedback doesn't make any sense, but I mean like strongly negative feedback without any justification, without any explanation, without any sort of like, trying to be constructive. It was just bad feedback for the sake of bad feedback. And all those people, they got to do that once, and then the professor just kicked them out of the class, because that's a waste of time. And stuff like that hurts people's feelings. I'm not saying that it's okay, that you should not toughen up your skin. What I'm saying is that if you are in a group of people and you're agreeing to the same thing, the goal of feedback is to help the other improve. And if you say something so awful that it gets them to quit, you're the one who failed. And as I mentioned, and as I told my friend, if I read someone's writing, if I read a friend's writing, and there's something in there that is ineffective, I can point it out in a way that will not hurt their feelings. Like, I can just go through my list of like the red flags for like really bad feedback, making it personal. That's a really easy way. Not offering any sort of solutions or any sort of like possible things to do or fixes. Being super negative and not sticking in any kind of like we call it the feedback sandwich, where like if you give someone a couple of really negative notes, you give them like a positive one, or you point out something that they did well to kind of sandwich it, to not make people feel like all they did was fail in that feedback session. And the people who did awful feedback just never did any of that. It was all like aimed at the person, passive aggressive, or just outwardly just aggressive or negative, being mean about it. And like, these people, they all got kicked out of the class, because that's trash. You're taking a class to improve, and then you have guys that show up and all they want to do is just be mean to people. That's bad. But what about you, writerly friend? You who got the worst treatment possible. You got the nightmare story. You got a person who you trusted, who read your writing and told you it's bad. They might have not said you should quit, but they have made you feel that way. They told you your writing sucked, that it was bad, beyond repair. What do you do now? Well, I think that you should most definitely, without question, you should not stop writing. After all, this is what you like to do. It's your passion, it's your dream, it's your goal. You should not give any of that up over some careless words. And I would like to inspire you to read through that feedback. Read through it and see if you can dig up anything. Because whatever that person reacted to, it might be baseless. It might be. But there's a chance there might be something there. Something that tripped them up. Something that might be useful. It's likely that none of it will. But I think it helps to just look at it and also acknowledge that the feedback is ineffective. And feedback is very important, but not all feedback is worth the same. And I know some people can use that as an excuse to not learn, to not improve, to not polish their writing. But I feel like people who are going to do that are going to do that no matter what. Feedback, not all feedback is worth the same, but you should look at it and consider it. What matters at the end of it all is that we reach for feedback and that we seek to continue to improve. Because at the end of it all, we reached out to people to see what they thought, to see what they thought of our writing, if they caught anything that we didn't catch, so that we can continue on improving the text, the manuscript, and the story. I feel like sometimes people can get lost in the process and forget why they're doing what they're doing. What's the point of feedback? To reach out to people, to get another set of eyes looking at the story. Not all pairs of eyes will look at the story the same way. Some might not even be looking out for, inconsistencies or typos or grammar errors or formatting. And some of them might give you awful feedback. But it's part of the process. And I know it sucks right now. And I know you feel terrible right now. But I'm proud of you for going through that step. For reaching out to someone. That stuff is never easy. I hope if you do need to take a break, that's okay. But I hope you come back, you feel better, and you get back to writing. Okay? It's not easy to make the most out of bad feedback. But I think it helps, at least, to understand that it was bad and ineffective. And that person didn't give you anything you could learn from. It sucks. This book is bad. That's not useful feedback. That just isn't feedback. That isn't telling you anything you can learn from. Once again, writerly friend, I'm sorry you had to deal with that, but I hope that you get back to writing. Okay? Okay. And now, for the final segment of the show, today we have an exercise, a two-sided exercise. An exercise on just how easy it is to find a story idea. But also an exercise in time. In looking at a story through different points of view. Not the point of view of different people, but rather different time. If you're unfamiliar with this segment, let me tell you how it's gonna go. I'm gonna give you a weird prompt or an idea for a story, and you're free to do with it as you see fit. The instant you start thinking about it, and the instant you put pen to paper, or you start drawing, or you create something based on this, it ceases to be mine and it becomes yours. You don't have to link to me or anything, but if you do make something, I would love to read it, or see it, or play it. Now, as I was preparing for this session to sit here and to talk with you, I was looking, because I have acronyms for everything. I like to keep my files short. So back in the day when I was doing videos, they would be MK. For M. Kieran, Mr. Kieran, the name of my channel. So it would be like MK, the name of the video. And now that I'm doing Omakase, me feeling like the little clever person that I am, I'm like, oh, what if I call the files OMK? Omakase. And I was writing, my little notes, and I'm like, notes for OMK 8. Because this is the 8th episode of the podcast. And I was looking, as I was looking at my badly drawn 8, I realized that it looked more like the infinity symbol. The symbol of a loop caught within itself, forever attached. Like the flow of a river that feeds back into itself. or a snake that is perpetually eating its own tail. The Ouroboros of mythology. I was looking at the symbol of infinity, and of course, instantly, without thinking about it, story idea. And we are gonna talk about it. Sometimes I give you a setup, sometimes I give you a scene, a character, a situation. Today, I have a setup, a thing that's happening, and I want to know what you would do, how you would establish it, how you would twist the story, what you would do. Here it goes. Write a story about a character who is trapped somewhere in a location, in a place where they are made to live forever, for infinity. How does a person change over years of being stuck in the same place, over millennia, over tens of hundreds of thousands of millions of years stuck in the same place? What do you picture in your mind? An apartment? An office? A room? A prison cell? Who is this character? What have they done? Are they willingly inside of this timeless chamber? Or is this their punishment for something they did? What do they look like? What do you see? I have a very specific mental image for the person in this place, and a very particular image for the place itself. I don't know why, but I picture like one of those Hollywood hilltop houses. The really expensive ones with like high ceilings, tall windows. I keep imagining yellow curtains, the walls painted yellow, light hardwood floors, open concept kitchen, a wide living room with a staircase that leads to a second story. Outside, beyond the windows, greenery, hills, grass, trees, a forest maybe. A beautiful house, expensive. Why wouldn't the character be able to leave? Why can't they just break that window? Break that wall? Why can't they just go out the front door? Why have they been living for tens of hundreds of thousands of millions of years? In there. In that place. Why? There are, of course, immediate magical reasons. It's a time prison. Or there are questions about the nature of reality. Maybe that place is not a place. It's not a physical place. Maybe it's the afterlife. Maybe it's some sort of digital prison. Or a file left on someone's computer. An application. A digital ghost. Forever running on an abandoned computer tower. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it is divine punishment by some sort of strange god. What sort of awful thing would you have to do to get a god to lock you up inside of the same place for tens of hundreds of thousands of millions of years? You would have had to have done something terrible. Or maybe that god is very petty. What if that whole place is filled with people like that? Not petty gods, but people who have been banished from time itself. What if the house was filled with people? What if the house was filled with people out of time? What if the story was told not across a timeline, across the length of a year or a day, but across tens of hundreds of thousands of millions of years? What if chapter 1 is day 1? Then we skip forward 10 years later, 100 years later, 1,000 years later. And as the chapters and the pages go, our character keeps changing. In spite of being in the same environment, they keep changing. And what if, without realizing it, they become something else? A title just popped into the back of my head. How to Build an Elder God. That seems funny, but I don't know. I'm not even sure what that would mean. That's a cool title, though. How to Make Your Own Elder God. Huh. Consider the nature of change. And we usually think of character change as characters being affected by something or characters willingly changing, usually at the climax or the apex of their character arc. But imagine change coming from a lack of variables in their environment. If you do anything today, I want you to think about yourself. How would you change if you were locked inside of the same house, the same room? How would you change over the course of tens of hundreds of thousands of millions of years? And hey there. Thank you for listening. Also, real talk. If you think that you would go crazy after 1,000 years of being locked in the same place, raise your hand. Yeah, same. But hey, thank you for listening. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me. As always, ratings, reviews, likes, they mean a lot. They really help a small podcast like this, and they would mean a lot to me. If you enjoy my content, consider pledging to my Patreon page or, giving me a one-time donation in the description of the YouTube video. But regardless of all that, I hope you had fun today. I hope that you enjoyed what I had to bring to the conversation, whether it was my rant, my answers to the questions, and of course, this weird prompt. I hope you have a lovely day, and until the next time we meet again. And now, it is time for the end of the video. Welcome to another session of the End of the Video Club. Let's begin with shoutouts to every single one of my patrons. That's right, everybody, every single one of my patrons, every person. That's right, it's true. Here on the End of the Video Club, I give a shout out to every single one of my patrons. So your name may or may not be about to get butchered. Gilbert, your name may or may not be butchered again live on stream. A big thank you to every single one of my patrons pledging at least $1 a month. Starting with A. Howard, Alisa Dudley, Amanda Stevens, Amelia, Amy Palmer, Angela, Aniexo Hushi, Biting the Sun, Blarg, Brenda, C.E. Richards, Caitlin Bombalo, Cannibal Lily, Carriette Eccleston, Kathy Lindsay. Oh no, I'm doing it again. Kathy Lindsay. You've been a patron for so long. And for 40 months. Kathy, you've been a patron for 40 months. How many years is that? Is that 3 years? No way. Wait, 40 divided by 12. Yeah, I can't do basic math. That's 3 years. 3 years and point 3, so a third would be 4 months. 3 years and 4 months. Dang. Thank you, Kathy. Someday I'll get your name right, I promise. Christine Dennis. I have the preview window right over people's months. Christiane has been a patron for 32 months. Oh my god. Have I never seen this button the whole time I've had a patron? Oh my god. Oh my god. I can't look at it. I'm gonna freak out. Christine Dennis. Kristen Lofton. Citro. Clem Pastor. Carissa Glasheen. Dwayne Jackson. Arasos. Joffrey. Gilbert Gaudreau. Gaudreau. I mean, I could look it up how the name is pronounced, but I could also not do that. And it'll be funnier later when you call me out on it. Heather Tasker. Irina Phoenix. John Netz. Janusz Chybatsky. Jaytana Kirkwood. Jeffrey James Williams. Joe. Juan Nunes. K.M. Anderson. Kameshwar Rao Shaluri. Kaylee. Kiel. Kit Lee. Lear Killo. Wait a minute. Lear. Did I say Lear? Oh, I'm so bad. It's Lear. It's Lear, right? Lear literally joined my Discord, and I chatted with Lear for the first time ever, and I'm like, Lear. It's Lear. Oh no. I'm doing that thing. I'm second guessing myself. And because I'm second guessing myself, I am second guessing myself. And I'm like, oh no. Have I been calling her the wrong name the whole time? More likely than you think. Lisa Effa. Luki. MT Locatelli. Mark Maruska. Mary Foster Smith. Nicola. Nicole Grissom. Nicolay. Noam Sohar. Novels and Tomes. Pablo. Pat Eichson. Polly Craftool. Rain Misoa. Raquel Fernandez. Roa. Shimmer Tales. Sky D. White. Soul Muse. Sylvia Latilla. Synexia. Thomas Baker. And Wendy Christopher. Hey guys. Hopefully the sound is good. There's a little bit of background noise, and I've been really good about getting it out, but hopefully everything will sound good. Hey there! Welcome back to the end of the video club. I am your master of ceremonies, M. Kieran, and today, on the end of the video club, we'll have a delightful reading of my grocery list. I actually don't have a grocery list on me. I just thought of the first thing that came to mind. I'm like, oh, what would be a dumb thing for me to read at the end of this video? But for now, I gotta get out of here. I gotta bounce. Thank you for joining us at the end of the video club. We will meet on the next episode for tea and cookies, and I hope that you all have a lovely week between now and the next time we see each other. Take care, stay strong, and make yourself a cup of tea. Right now, take a break, stop, brew yourself a cup of hot or cold tea, take a deep breath, and then take a sip, and then get back to work.